Welcome back. Adam's going to be recording because I think maybe is somebody absent, maybe one or two people?
We have one. Christy's not here.
Christy,
Everyone else is here.
So she can watch the video if she would like to. If you don't have a chance for that, you could also just update her in conversation if you get a chance. But we do want to have that in case she would like to be part of that. So we have two. So we have Caroline, you took your top 5, and Jennifer, you also took your top 5. So I don't want to see, I know Jennifer, you just took it, so you probably haven't had a chance to really read over it extensively yet. But what we're going to do today is we're just going to orient a little bit more around the themes, and we're going to talk through the alignment meter worksheet that you did. And I think I'd like to start with, after last week, did you share your top 5 results with anyone? Was there any discussion amongst the team after our meeting? And if so, did something come out of that, be it just an observation about yourself or an observation about somebody else's communication style? Just like to hear, what emerged from last week.
You guys want to start? Since you guys Can you hear me?
Yes.
Belinda? Okay. I didn't know if I needed to. I mean, I know that I have much observation. I just know that we compared our top 5s and kind of shared. I asked her if she was surprised by any of hers, and she said no, and I wasn't really surprised by any of mine either. Was there anything else?
We haven't really analyzed like the anatomy of it yet. I mean, I looked over mine and saw, I kind of found it interesting, the mismatch in the rut in the anatomy thing. I thought that was really interesting and very accurate in a weird way.
Right? It's uncanny sometimes.
But I also think after our last strength finder last week, that like the way I was reacting to situations or just going through my daily work, I was thinking about my top 5 more after our training session last week.
Yeah, especially filling out this alignment meter worksheet. I was like, wow, I really was channeling each aspect of each theme that I found in my quiz or whatever. So I thought that was interesting.
That's great.
I got so I know Allie was going through them, and I didn't think I was in a rut, and then she helped me identify that I was in 3 ruts. So I thought that was really helpful. At first I was like, I'm not in a rut, and then I read it and I was like, yeah, I totally feel that way right now.
That's great. And that you'll find too that that's where the teamwork can really come in handy, because so much of this is unconscious at this point. Part of this, process is making it more conscious, and sort of like once you're more aware of it, you can channel it to help you do what you do better with more satisfaction. But at this stage, it's really just about connecting to it and observing it and sort of pulling that sort of unconscious patterning out and being like, oh, and then we'll get to sort of how to, apply it a little more specifically. But you're right on. It's great.
Anybody else? What does rut like? Does this rut mean that this is how I'm acting, or this situation puts me in a rut?
Say that again. I'm sorry, I didn't hear it very well.
Oh, okay. So if I'm reading these theme anatomy and I'm looking at rut, does that mean like this situation is going to put me in a rut, or this is how I'm behaving because I'm in a rut?
That's a great question. So ruts mean reoccurring unconscious traps. These are just meant to be suggestions. So it might be that you don't experience these. Like if input, feels like it's in a rut, it might not look just like this. This is just meant to be kind of a jumping off point. But ruts can be, it's sort of like, what's the difference between a rut and a mismatch? Not entirely a lot, except that a mismatch is more situational perhaps, and a rut might be more of an internal state. That's not always, it's not super clean cut, but that's something you can kind of look to. So like my rut with input sometimes is I'll just go down a rabbit hole so far, so long, and I'll have so much information that I overwhelm myself. And like if I'm overwhelmed and I have the super high capacity for that, how must somebody else feel, if they don't have input? And so or maybe my rut is overwhelming somebody with that. So it could look a few different ways. It's just meant to kind of get you thinking.
Yeah, I want to take a stab at it too. The idea is that each of these 5 themes has a pull. It pulls you in a direction. You feel that, right? Like you feel your theme making you want to go in this direction and do something. That's what these are. These are patterns. That means over time, these play out quite often in your life. So what happens is you might be pulled in a certain direction, but that pull is not a good match for the situation. So if I have activator, let's see, there's nobody in, only one person has activator. Bailey has it. So for Bailey, she wants to get started on something, and maybe sitting in a meeting is kind of like, okay, this is dragging out. I want to get somewhere. I want to do something, right? So you feel that pull to do that. That's natural. That's how you're built. That's how you're wired. And in some instances, it's a huge advantage to get started, to want to, we'll figure it out as we go. There's no way we can pre-plan everything in this situation. We just need to go and learn as we go. And you're good at that. You've been doing it your whole life. But in other situations, it might be a disadvantage. And that's when you can find yourself being in a rut. And we could take developer, since a lot of you have developer in the group. You have this urge to develop somebody. It's a pull. It's almost like an irresistible kind of draw that you have toward that. Well, when that person doesn't want to be developed, then it's going to feel like you're criticizing them, maybe. So that would be a rut, a mismatch for the situation. And so that's...
Okay, can I ask another question? So like, for example, I've got, for 2 different things, I've got a rut would be people perceive your visions as abstract, or a rut is you're prone to distraction. Like, am I distracted because I'm in a rut, or like I'm being distracted makes me in a rut? Or now that like I'm in a rut and people all of a sudden are like, your idea is so abstract right now. It's like,
yeah, you talking about ideation?
Well, one of those was the rut was strategic, as people perceive your visions as abstract, and then the ideation was prone to distraction. Like, I could see how if I was in a rut, I'd be really distracted maybe, but I don't know if I'm interpreting this as when I'm really distracted, that puts me in a rut. I don't know.
It's both. Yeah. So I have strategic, and my rut for that one looks a lot like I will explain like the end thing we're going to do. Like, I'll be like, okay, we're going to do this, 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 and this. And someone's like, wait, what? Excuse me? Like, what are you talking about? Where is this even coming from? Because I didn't, kind of, and I'll be like, no, come on, don't you see it? Don't you see it? Let's go, But I didn't walk them through the steps to help them see what I saw to get to that place, because strategic happens so quickly. So that might look like a rut if you're in communication with somebody and they're not perceiving, your vision right off the bat. It might feel like a rut, like, well, why not, Or it might feel internally like a rut. Like, if you can't see the big picture, you can't see the best path forward. And so that can produce feelings of distraction. That definitely happens for me. And again, I'm not saying this is just ideas. I don't know if that is how it shows up for you, but it can either be an internal state of mind or an external experience about matching the situation or matching the relationship that you're currently like in the room with somebody. So it can show up a different way, and then you can catch it. But we don't, we really emphasize that it's just a potential pattern that once you're aware of it, you have the power to sort of do something with. You can stay in the rut if you want. It's fine. But now it's like, okay, I'm in that rut. Well, what do I need to get out of that? maybe I need to explain the vision, or developer, maybe this particular project, you know, I'm trying too hard to develop a project that is meeting a lot of resistance, or a person. Maybe I'll pull back from that and apply my energy elsewhere. So we don't really talk about these things as like strength versus weakness. We don't actually really agree with that. We just think it, you know, it's just a mismatch for the situation, or the internal patterns it's producing are not really serving you in that moment. And so trying to shift how it could serve you. Sometimes it's usually just interrupting it and turning down the volume a little bit. You can't really turn these things off. Think of them like 5 fingers of your hand. It's like they're going to all work together, and you're not going to take your hand off and set it aside for later. So you have them operating inside of you, and they're all going to be working together. So you can kind of look to those. And that's why we have you do the alignment meter, because that's a really practical application of that. It's like, what in my day-to-day shows up, and how is it a match or a mismatch? And then once those things are identified, you can, you know, be a little more conscious about how you're directing them. Does that answer your question a little bit more?
I think the way I look at it is like, these themes, there's 2 sides. And sometimes it just depends on what kind of day you're having, what kind of situation you're in, if you're feeling really happy that day, if you're feeling really stressed. Like, for example, one of mine is responsibility, which means I take psychological ownership of my commitment. I set high standards for myself. I do whatever it takes to make good on promises. But the flip side of that is, because I have such strong responsibility feelings, sometimes I can be like consumed with guilt based on what this says. Like, if a commitment is not met, or a project doesn't go the way I want it to, or then I feel guilty that it wasn't successful. So that's kind of the way I look at it now. There's just 2 sides to all of these themes. It doesn't necessarily mean strength or weakness, or good or bad. It's just kind of like what you can feel because you have this theme. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, so what do you do if, like, you notice some of these patterns as you're in a rut?
Well, that's part of what we're going to be walking you through. It's sort of, first, there is a very specific process on how to do this. And so right now we're just sort of like orienting to the talents. Like, here are the top 5. Here's how to kind of get familiar with them, to connect to them. And really, that is the first and most fundamental step, is just kind of like noticing those patterns, connecting to how they really show up for you, and remembering them. So that's going to be something we do a little bit of homework on, but next time we'll talk a little bit more. But that connect stage is where we are. We're kind of like, all right, that alignment meter, that's going to show us how it shows up a little bit. All the reports, that's going to give us some context and some sort of like knowledge around it. And then once you feel connected to it, we'll move into even more consistent observation of it, which we already did start with the alignment meter, but we'll talk a little bit more about, like, all right, in this moment, I'm seeing this play out this way, or someone's seeing it, because you guys will be a great boost for each other. Once you know each other's themes, you'll be able to catch them and verbalize, like, oh, did you know you do this? And they'll be like, sometimes they'll be like, oh yeah, I totally do. And sometimes like, really? Huh, you know, because they're so close to us. They're just part of how we operate. We don't think to observe them. And we talk about like taking it almost in slow motion replay, which is what conversation around it does, or catching it in the moment. Like, adaptability is a really good one to use, because adaptability is all about the moment. And so you might have this moment where someone comes in and is like, I need this now, and you drop everything that you were doing that you also was something you needed to get done as well. But someone has a need and you're going to help them. And I want you to like take that and rewind it. Like, I did that. And that's what adaptability is about. And so you're going to start to observe them. That's when you're going to start to see, like, oh, this is where it shows up as a really strong match. I want to do more of this. I want to feel more of this. Or a mismatch, which is then it's like, okay, now what do I do with that? I don't want that. How do I address that? That's the interrupt phase. And that's really where we just sort of talk about just, okay, how do those ruts show up? What can you do? Then we get into the nuance phase where it's really more like you're not going to turn them on and off. You're not going to set your hand aside. It's more about controlling the volume to match the situation to best support you. And so then that kind of takes you through sort of what to do with this, because that's the biggest question with these assessments. And that's where this can be really useful, is that without this method, it's just a bunch of, words on a page really, and it's nice, it describes you, but it's sort of like, well, now what? How can we make this useful? So that's the process we're beginning. So we're at that very beginning stage. You're not supposed to know all the things, but just starting to connect and starting to observe. So one of the things, I was going to save it for later, but one of the things I want you to do between now and next month, because I think we have almost a month before we meet again, and I'll look at my schedule, I might be wrong, but I think I'm right. You have to remember these themes, and the order is important. So Adam, can you take off screen share so I can see everybody? Thanks. The order is important. So what I tell people to do, we have a little exercise that I was going to say for next time, but I want you to take a picture of your top 5 report with your phone, or put it up in your office, put it really in somewhere very visible, and start having it like easy access. It's great that you guys are, you're a developing team, but you're still small enough to where you can really use this information very quickly. So like you can look at somebody's top 5 before you go into the meeting. You're going to start connecting with each other's themes much faster than a larger organization, which is really fun. So do that, learn your own, have it really handy, because if you go into a meeting and someone's like, oh, which one do you have? And you're like, well, I don't remember. Then it's like there's no conversation. There's no chance to explore and observe. So it's super simple, but just have it handy. Like it's, I have it. I mean, now at this point I have it memorized, but picture on the phone is like the easiest way to go, I think. Adam goes a step further. He's like, put it as your wallpaper on your phone. Like, put it as your screensaver or whatever.
Tattoo it to your forehead.
So that everyone knows coming in.
But I wanted to stop. I mean, because I want to make sure we're answering the question and that it's clear, because we're packing in a lot of stuff all at one time. So let me just pause and see what you took from that, and see if that helped clarify for you. On your question, was that Natalie who asked the question?
Yeah. Well, I thought that basically the answer was we'll get to it.
It is, and because it is so much information, and if you want to get
hold on. The answer is not. A lot of what Felinda said is answering it now. It's as you connect with your themes, because it doesn't sound like you've fully made that connection yet. Then you'll be able, once you do connect with your themes, and by connect, it's like, oh yeah, that's me. I see that in me. Other people see that in me. Okay, that is a pattern I display, and then you'll see it happening in different situations. That's when we get into what we call the observe phase, where you can actually see your themes. And it sounds like you've already started to get there a little bit too, just from some of the conversation. You start to see your themes playing out throughout the day. Then the third step eventually is you'll learn to interrupt your themes. You'll say, oh, my strategic theme is not really going to be an asset here, even though I feel pulled or compelled to strategize. I need to slow down. This is a situation that I can't see all the possibilities yet, for example. So then you might dial down your strategic theme and maybe say, you know what I need instead here? I need more context, because that's your number 4 theme. Instead of strategizing, let me first get a sense of where we've been. That's the context theme is really great for that. And you'll start to see that you could find the right theme for the right situation. That's where we are going, but in what Felinda was describing, that is the pathway, and you're already kind of moving in that direction. So that's great. But the first thing is really make sure you connect with your themes. That's why we want you to read through the reports and really understand your themes. Yeah. And somebody.
Okay. I think
So
has to cut.
I find it very interesting to say that, and the reason why, hearing Natalie talking about hers,
when she was talking about, you know, one of the ruts is, you know, the distractions. I find that Natalie's best strength, or I think strategic is one of your strengths. I find she's more strategic when she doesn't have a lot of those distractions. So I thought that was interesting that the rut was for a different strength, but it affected another strength, I felt like.
Oh yeah.
So like, you know, it's when she's, you know, thriving, it's, you know, I'm wondering if it's, you know, how connected are all of our strengths, and the fact that like if I have a rut for another strength, is it going to be a domino effect for all of my other ones?
That's a great question. I'm going to just say talents because I want you to feel that they're kind of natural abilities that you're going to apply to things where you could be strong. So yes, so sometimes you'll catch like, oh, I'm in a rut with context, and that's kind of stopping either my ideation or my strategic, or, you know, it. And then you can nuance that other one. You're like, all right, I need more of this right now. This situation is calling for this. So a great example would be, you know, going back to the adaptability. It's like
Adaptability theme is what we're talking about, not just the general term adaptability.
Yeah. And it's like going into that of like, yes, that rut of adaptability being pulled in a different direction can be a major asset where it's not a rut, but the rut is you might drop what you need to get done in service of helping somebody else, a lovely quality. But, you know, that is something that shows up again and again for people with adaptability. It may or may not for the people in this room, but it's something to consider, because what if what you need more of in that moment is to pull a ranger forward and say, all right, this moment calls for a ranger where I arrange the resources. It's also at the moment. And I dial down that adaptability so that I'm not leaving what I need to do. So it's a little bit of that catch and correct, and absolutely one of the ruts of one can influence another. And so that's part of this connecting with them, is like, when does that show up? Did that answer your question? Because that's a really important one, and it's, I think, going to be useful for everyone too. All the questions are, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely it helps. So.
Okay. Let's go ahead and get into, I don't want to run out of time. I want to hear about your alignment meter worksheet, and then we'll keep talking through some of these contexts. So yeah, great. Thank you for bringing that and for filling it out. I appreciate it. So I would love to hear some examples specifically of your observations. And, you know, we'll just start the discussion and then we'll go from there.
So my name's Jen. Oh, sorry. My name's Jen. So one of my weaknesses is timekeeping. And so this was an interesting homework. And I did it. And I have 4 pages of
That's awesome.
from 5 a.m. one day, 5 a.m. yesterday, till when I went to bed at 12:30. So again, I'm sure I'm also whatever you want to call this. I'm a realist, so we want to put that under. But I just wrote one word as my top 5 themes. I didn't like to write sentences. Just to be realistic, it felt like I should get a medal in this meeting that I did this, and that I did it all. I'm just kidding, but kind of. But you know, again. Anyways, and it was interesting because I felt like out of all my themes, I could probably, for everything I did yesterday, I could put them on any of my tasks, because it definitely, I'm a person where I do know my themes are constantly, they're definitely working together, which I know, like you said, you don't cut off your hand, or it's always with you. So I definitely get that concept already, and this utilize that. So anyways, that's all I have to say. But it was a busy day.
I think that's great. And I know that I think your adaptability theme is maybe sometimes resistant to sitting down and looking at the time, like you said. So I do think you should get a medal. Did you find any specific observations, like anything that surprised you or intrigued you that you wanted to go back and look at closer in your day?
Not really. I mean, I'm very self-aware what I don't know. So that I'm the part-time worker, but I do still work every day. So it's interesting to see, like, you know, like I have twins. So like one woke up at 6:30, then I answer emails for 30 minutes, and I make breakfast, and I go on a play date, and I take 4 calls on my play date. Like,
I'm constantly usually doing probably 3 tasks at once. So like I took a call yesterday when my kids are supposed to be napping and they glittered themselves in the whole room, like literally. Like I'm gonna glitter on April 2020. And it was funny because it's like rate what you felt. And I think I put a 95 because it was hilarious and it could have been glue and I really didn't care, but I just had to, it's kind of annoying to vacuum for a while, but like I honestly like could care less. Yeah, like I'm gonna have glitter everywhere. But it was funny to think like that that's just how I am. I know that probably would have bothered a lot of people, but I thought it was funny. Like in the scheme of life, like it wasn't glue. Like that would have been
right. And developer, you see that they're in there being creative and fun, and like, yeah, it causes some problems.
Yeah, so I asked one of them. I asked the first, the oldest, did you think that was right or wrong? And she's like, I thought it was wrong. Then I asked her sister, did you think that was right or wrong? She's like, I thought it was right. I was creating art. I'm like, valid. They both have valid.
Good answer.
So that's kind of how I think too. Like it wasn't like best use of glitter, but like I'm not going to get mad at them. Like, I don't care. So, anyways, and this will be good for my timekeeping skills for April 23rd. So I can just input it into teamwork.
I would also just, as you go, I want you to, like I said last time, we don't really separate out the personal and the professional. We think strength-based life is all of it. It's not, you are participating in all of it. And so paying attention to reactions, specific tasks. And if you rate a task lower and it surprises you, look at why. If you rate one high and it surprises you, like that, there was a lot inside of rating that a 95. Not everybody would have done that. And so, really kind of like grabbing hold of that moment is so important, because the things that you rate high, you can replicate. And you might not realize how to do that, but if you start kind of doing that slow motion replay of that moment, why was it so high? Well, it was hitting this, 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 and this, and it made me happy. Those are the things that like you can replicate that, maybe without glitter all over the room, but those are the moments that matter.
I've got another question for you. Okay, so like yesterday, I feel like yesterday was a really weird day for me just because there's a lot of planning and stuff that goes in my day on Monday as far as work goes. So don't you think that this is like very subjective by the day?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you can get a good idea, but it is one of the things, like if you concretely do it for a day, you're going to find yourself thinking about this on other days. Like even if you're not filling out the worksheet, maybe Wednesday looks extremely different, but maybe in the background you'll be like, oh, you know what? I'd rate this activity like really high because I'm really enjoying it. So it's going to have some residual effects if you've done it concretely once. So yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
Like even some of the same tasks might get a different rating on a different day.
Why do you think so?
Well, for instance, I have a weekly standing meeting about digital stuff, and we're behind. So I felt like overwhelmed and we're behind on some deadlines. And so, but sometimes I go into that meeting and I'm like, sweet, we're rocking this. And so I would have felt like we're on top of stuff and that would make me feel good. And so that same meeting might get a completely different result.
Yes. And I think it's look at why, like what in that meeting was sort of taking that arrow down. And I would say probably strategic. You weren't feeling the progress and knowing you need to get to the progress, and that's an urge for strategic. But if you are on top of it, you're like, yes, here we go. We're on point. Like it's happening. So absolutely. But there, you're going to see that theme really sway one direction or the other based on the circumstances. Absolutely.
Okay.
I also would say, too, that the overwhelm factor then is instructive. It says, oh, when you're experiencing overwhelm, your themes don't flow as smoothly as they would if you weren't so overwhelmed. So then, that's where you might look at managing the plate, managing what's on your plate. It's hard to be at your best if you're in a constant state of overwhelm. Some people are better off when they're constantly overwhelmed, but I know I'm not. But I also know that when I'm underwhelmed, I'm also not at my best.
There's definitely in the sweet spot.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just curious because I felt like, I mean, if you look at my alignment meter, it'd be like, as long as I was exercising, I'd be okay.
Well, actually, interestingly enough, movement plays a really big role in these. And it's not talked about that often, but I particularly am interested in this piece of it. So like, for example, if movement helps you focus, that's something to consider. Like for activator, if you don't like meetings, taking handwritten notes or moving around, you know, letting people know like, hey, I just need to stand up and move. I actually pay attention better that way. You know, if that's the urge, right? I don't enjoy a sit down meeting. I stand, because if I sit down in a meeting like this, I get antsy. But it will probably help everybody to some degree. So looking for those things that like help boost it a little bit. Movement's a big one.
Yeah, I think it's like also I'll tap into my context theme, which Adam, you said I hadn't connected with my theme. That's like I've like grabbed hold of context and like forget everything else that's on my theme. Like me and context have bonded.
Yes, actually, that's generally a trait with context. Context usually shows up pretty strong for people.
And
yeah, well, I'm thinking like, you know, sometimes like, for instance, that workout was a good workout yesterday, but there'd be times that I would also rate a workout really low because I was tired or I felt like pressure, I didn't have enough time. I mean, there's definitely instances where I would give a workout a low rating.
Yeah, look at why. You know, what were the factors going into that? That's the true for everyone in this room. It's true for Adam, for myself. We do things we like to do generally. Why, when we're not going well, what's happening? A lot of answers lie inside of this. When they are going well, what's happening? We tend to always focus on the negative, but focus on when something's going well. Why is it going well? What do you like about it? It's important to kind of nuance that out. I'd like to hear a couple more examples if we could.
This is Andrea. I did mine last Friday. And one thing I noticed is right after like around noon, everything just got a lower score immediately. Even like, so one of the things that I did last Friday, we had a lot of intern interviews, and the very first one that was early in the morning got a really high score. But then the other ones didn't get as high as a score, even though I enjoyed them more. I think it was just they were late in the afternoon and I was kind of done with the day. I also noticed anything involving face-to-face time with people got really high scores. And the thing that got the highest score, which was a 90, was when I got to play with dogs.
Yep. Right in line with
either that or taking a nap, that got a really high score too.
Yeah, well, naps are very productive, mentally restorative. Well, I would suggest looking at your top 5. You know, you have empathy, adaptability, developer, positivity, and achiever. Do I have those correct? Am I looking at the right line?
That's me.
Okay. So we're going to talk about the colors a little bit. They are not hard and fast, but one thing I will tell you about this group is you do have a lot of the relationship building themes, and that means typically you're going to be happier doing things with people. That does not mean you don't like doing things on your own. Everybody needs alone time. But I would suggest if you start to feel your energy drop, and it's not for an obvious reason, like you're tired, or maybe your empathy was tapped by then because you were like, oh, all these candidates are great, or oh no, that one wasn't as good, and so we have to make a choice. That's hard for someone with empathy and developer and positivity to have to try to rank people. It's not to say, I mean, you're probably very excellent at doing so, but it's hard to have to make a choice among strong candidates. So that might be part of the drain. But if it's not an obvious reason. Like I'm tired and yeah, the day was done and it's a long week or whatever. Look at how you might kind of pull in, like look at the matches, look at the enablers, and see how you might bring in more of that to the experience. So doing things with people, you're probably going to get a higher score than doing things alone generally. So if you start to feel that arrow drop down, look at why and see, where might you change that. For someone with like me, like with intellection or strategic, I actually need downtime. I need alone, quiet time to recharge. Someone with, more relationship building themes, time alone might actually feel draining. Time with people might feel energizing. So look at, those kinds of things too. That's great.
I don't want to take away from someone's example. I was just going to make an observation that Andrea and I were both dog sitting for friends this weekend. And I was just I filled out my chart yesterday, Monday, and yesterday morning was the last morning that I had to go and let the dog out and feed him and feed her and all that. And I noticed that was what I rated highest on my chart. Also, I think that comes from being an animal lover, but also I associated that with responsibility on my chart because when I left my friend's house, I was very particular about leaving everything the way it was when he left. I made sure the dog, like, I didn't just go in and feed it and let it out. Like, I played with it. Yeah, I love pet sitting. And I even noticed, this is like an extreme example, that he has a lot of windows in his house and he left all the blinds open. And it freaks me out. I'm paranoid about that. And so I closed them all when I was there. But when I left on Monday morning, because he was returning that evening, I made sure all of the blinds were exactly where they were when he left. And I just normally do that. But then since I filled out my chart yesterday, I realized I was like, that was very high responsibility, making sure that like, I got a good review for being a dog sitter. I just want to point out that Andre and I almost had the same experience, and that was rated highest on our sheet. So.
Is that Lacey?
Yes, this is Lacey.
Yeah, I think it's great. I definitely see the responsibility in there. But what's really great about the story is how it starts to bring in the other themes. Your belief reinforces you to do things the right way and not take shortcuts. You do what you think is right. So your responsibility, belief double down on each other. Your individualization is what notices, oh, he likes the blinds open, and then you want to, get it back to where it was to that person's liking. Your empathy probably was like, well, if somebody was dog sitting for me, what would I want them to do? And you behave that way as well. So, it's really cool to start to see how your other themes also begin to color in the picture. As Felinda said, they're like 5 fingers on the hand. They're not 5 individual fingers. They're whatever. I hate doing that. It's a weird visual. But yeah, you're just 5 fingers, and they just know what to do and they just move in concert with each other.
I didn't think about that. Thanks, Adam.
Yeah,
okay. Hi, this is Nicole Bauman. I wasn't here last week, but I watched the session and filled out all the stuff and whatnot. Okay, so kind of want your opinion. I got my strength finder and found that my number one thing was futuristic. And at first I was like, wow, that's awesome. I always set goals for myself and I think about the future all the time, mainly because I'm graduating soon. But then I kind of was curious to see how that would play into my, daily, my meter worksheet. And I found that while that's my top strength, it also stresses me out a lot. I notice that conversations I have talking about the future, that's when I get the most stressed sometimes. And so it's interesting that it's like my top strength, but it also causes the most.
I want to jump on that one too real quick. Futuristic can be one of the most anxiety-producing themes because our nature is to be in the present. The world is happening in the moment where we are. But someone with futuristic is always projecting things out into the future. So you have to manage the demands around you in the moment, but then you have another set of demands of I have to get somewhere, I have to be there, I have to, prepare for the future. And so, it's like the present can be enough of a demand. Adding the future on top of it can really add to it. So that's why this tool could be so useful, so that you're managing your themes instead of your themes managing you. And that's why I want to show you a little visual that I think helps to kind of bring this to light. And it's just a simple diagram. It has, here's what life is like. We're this person on the back of the chariot, and our themes are like these horses pulling us. And what we're trying to get to is, after we work on this more, and it takes a while, and I don't think Belinda and I are even at this stage yet, but we're way beyond not this stage, and we're moving closer to this stage where we're more in control of what our themes do. So when you see your futuristic just going bonkers, if you can connect with that futuristic theme and then observe it and go, oh, there's my futuristic telling me what this is going to look like, or that's going to look like, or how it should be, then you can maybe learn to interrupt it when it's not useful for you. Futuristic is extremely useful. It's like you have long view. You can see out further than other people. If I was working with you, I would often say to you, Nicole, what does that look like for you? Because you would be giving me a view of like the future. When we go to this meeting or this event, what do you see happening? How do you see it playing out? And you'd be able to be like, yeah, it'll look like this and that, and it'll really help me. But for you, if you haven't managed it, it can become an extra burden. So hopefully this process that we're going to take you through will help your futuristic be more of an asset, and then create less pressure or stress. Those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah, that's great. So I think also you can call, like when you feel that anxiety, it's like now you might have a reason why that's coming up. This definitely applies for everybody too, by the way. And you can call on one of your other themes. So you can probably bring your learner in service of helping reduce some of the anxiety, learning what about the present moment will inform the future, and how that learning might shape the view of the future. You can use your achiever to say, all right, I'm anxious in this moment. Why? Okay, futuristic is really demanding that this is where we're going to go and how it's going to happen. What steps and tasks might need to come into play to get me from where I am now, which is feeling anxious that I'm not there, to that point. So you could sit down and do almost like a strategic planning session with Achiever. So you can call on other things, or a developer. What might I need to help support this person to get on board with my vision? Or what might I need to do to kind of like, learner will really go hand in hand with that, by the way, to sort of shape that future and to understand like the future. One thing that can be a very challenging, like futuristic can help create a beautiful and incredible vision, but learning that that vision is going to be shaped by the present will help also reduce that. And pulling in developer and learner are going to be really supportive, most likely. So you'll have to see if that resonates and see if that actually does kind of play out in reality, but everyone will see that. So like if you're looking at one theme and you're like, wow, in this moment, I'm feeling a lot of anxiety or kind of pressure or guilt. Okay, why? That's probably because of X, Y, or Z, responsibility or strategic or something. Well, what might I bring in to kind of ameliorate that and give a little bit more support? Because you're not trying to have a difficult internal experience. You're just trying to give yourself support, and bringing in those other themes will give you a very positive way to do that. Connecting with them and being aware. So it's new. So what I'd say is go back to the reports. If you're like, okay, I'm not sure, I'm feeling anxiety with futuristic. Now I've identified it's because of futuristic, and here's maybe some reasons why. Let me go read through some of those reports again and see if I can pull out something that would help. Or call us. I would be so happy to talk through individually, one-on-one, your top fives, because that can be, kind of help sort of solidify it. I'm happy to do that. So call me, email me. I'm seeing that we're coming up on our time. It always goes so fast, for me at least. So I do want to talk for just a moment. So we're after week 2. You've had a chance to kind of get a little bit familiar. I want you to keep working on this. If you don't physically fill out another alignment meter, try to make those connections. Memorize or somehow have your themes in front of you handy. Read through those reports, keep connecting. We're going to pick it back up in a month, but I want you as a group to just kick around some desired outcomes that you would like to see or you're interested in seeing from this training.
For individually or for the team or both?
It could be both. I mean, I'd like some team outcomes. I think that would be great to hear, but individually as well, yeah.
Right now. No, I think like homework now and like Adam. I think it's something to think on, but I could be wrong. Which one? People?
I mean, I know something for me, what I'd like to come out of this is more for team and not individual. But it was interesting reading, you know, the theme anatomy and the part of where it talks about like what is a mismatch and rut. And I think something for me is I love strategy sessions, and I'd like to see more of that because I feel like, you know, I love mental activity, and I feel like strategy sessions really stimulate that mental activity. And so I know for me, I'd like to see more of that as a team, and everybody pulling in their individual strengths for a client. So we're sitting in a client and having, about a strategy session, but everybody's pulling in all of their different strengths because, one strength might I don't have empathy, but like empathy, is something, talking about, understanding how, a potential customer might feel. So, thinking about from those things, and then, some of the things that we talked about with like Lacey, I think that overall, I think it'd be neat to have not just the team members who are part of the account, but have an overall, like the whole entire team, where everybody's pulling in their strengths that pull in, that fit the entire mold of like achieve everything that we're wanting. Because I'm very, like, I know you're going to talk about the colors, but like I'm all red and one blue, and so like I'm very, like, I feel like I'm very methodical about things and very pragmatic, but I also I'm a connectedness, and so I enjoy that aspect of stuff, and learning from other people that have the strengths that I don't have. Yeah, seeing the picture the way I don't see it.
Marie, that's great. And that's an excellent use of these themes, and they apply to your activities. Is like everyone has that perspective they're going to bring to the table. You're going to be really helpful in saying, like, we need this. This would be useful. A strategy session would be great right here for this client or for this, even it can be for, I think for clients is going to be where it really shows up as a group experience that kind of raises the bar, because everybody's going to be bringing that. Like someone's going to say like, well, actually I'm catching this because of empathy, or I'm catching this because of individualization, or what about this with communication? And you're going to be that anchor point of saying like, this is where this exercise will be useful, because that is a really strong anchor point. And so I think it will create the space for everybody to bring what they have to the table and in support of the client or initiatives. And I absolutely think it will help, just kind of bring out those qualities in each other even more. So you'll know them about each other. So then you'll be able to even start going to the person like, I know there's something missing here, and I think you'll have the answer, that kind of feeling. You'll start to know who in that activity will be like ready with an answer, just because it comes so naturally to them. And that's what I would like to see for your team as well. That's great.
One thing too, and we'll get into the detail of this more. These qualities are technically themes of talent. I know most people call them strengths. Even at Gallup, they call them strengths. But the man who created this assessment, he was very clear. These are themes of talent they're an important ingredient to creating a strength, but there's other ingredients to a strength. So these alone are not strengths, and that difference will become more important. Right now, I know it sounds a little just semantic, but we refer to them as themes or themes of talent, and that strength is actually something different, and that's why we want to make the distinction. So we'll get into what a strength is eventually. I also know it's called Strengths Finder, so of course, like, why wouldn't the results be called strengths? Totally get that. So we'll get into those details a little more future sessions.
Let me give you a really specific example of what that might mean. Is so that Maria, you just had a great example of connectedness and strategic and context and intellection all coming out right there. And learner, you want to learn about how other people operate. The themes of talent there are connectedness and strategic, but it's coming out as a strength of like, this is how we can apply it in this meeting with this group. You have a natural talent to see that, and you're applying it to a very specific way of bringing it into a practical application of, let's all meet so we can better deliver this service by, bringing in everybody's talent. So again, it's a hard distinction to make, but it's like that personality, that talent, that theme is going to lend you to be really strong in certain activities. So that's where you're going to just feel like it's so natural that it's just part of who you are, that you want to do it, you see the reasons for doing it, you know why it's effective, that kind of thing. But it's that activity of getting the group together. That's where the connectedness and the strategic and the context and the intellection are really playing out in an activity. Does that make, that is I wish they had named it something else because I do like having you kind of start to connect with that. So like, for example, the dog sitting. Your belief and your responsibility were the themes of talent being applied to the activity of dog sitting that made that experience enjoyable. I love dogs, but I don't enjoy dog sitting. It kind of stresses me out because I want to make sure everything's okay and it's on a schedule, and I got a puppy, so I'm getting used to the schedule now, but in the past, having a schedule was stressful for me. So that would have been rated low, even though I love the dog and I want to provide a great service for my friend. If that dog really required a super specific schedule, if they're like a dog that doesn't, great, I'm all in. But if they're a dog that's like on the timer, whoa, but that's my themes of talent either being applied, where yours came in and it's like, no, I'm super enjoying this. So I want to go back to outcomes because that one was great, and I want to build on some of those.
So one of mine would just be, I feel like I was really good at developing the team and developing individuals on the team, even a year ago. And I feel like I'm not as good at that anymore as I was. So, I would like to better understand how I can develop individuals, what seat they should have at the table, and, kind of what their path is for growth as the team and the environment has changed. I think that would be something that I would like to get out of it.
Great.
I think you're so good.
I am trying not to get emotional. So
I love it.
Team grows and as we evolve, like you're trying to figure out how to maintain that as things change.
Yeah. At the risk of getting emotional, I will say that my alignment meter was very heavy on responsibility, and so that's all. It's drained by the end of the day. Yeah. So I'm feeling it from the moment I wake up till I go to sleep. I forgot that we're
You
supposed
also
to
have the weight of, all of these women on your shoulders. Yeah. But I think that you're definitely still a great developer. At least for me, my experience is that I feel like what you do for me is you help me understand me better and applying my strengths the way I need to, because I don't understand me. And so that's something that you help, me through those problems. Yesterday we had, a conversation that you were really helping me navigate a problem, but you were helping me identify why I was having a problem.
Yeah.
So
I don't think you should think that,
Not to mention you're the one that is having us do all this, which means that you're developing them. I mean, that's team development. Plus, on top of that, Belinda said that all of us have I'm just going to use the word joy when it comes to having face-to-face time or relationships. And you're the person that picked that team. And unconsciously, whether you know it or not, you picked a team that has a overall theme of likes relationships. And I think that's pretty incredible.
Thank you, guys. The only time that I didn't have a theme to put down was when I was putting my kids to bed. And I was just like, there was nothing to do. All I had to do was lay there. So I think that's good too. You gotta give it a rest. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You gotta turn off your brain sometimes. Yeah.
I forgot we're supposed to write themes on mine. I was like happy listening to music.
I do the same thing, Natalie.
I was like, oh, I just don't know.
What's interesting that you're saying about this is that responsibility is one of your 5 strengths.
Yeah.
And tying it back to the other Nicole, she was saying her top strength was also her most stressor.
Yeah.
And so that's really interesting that, one of your strengths is responsibility, but it's also stressing you.
Yeah.
Because it's draining you at the end of the day.
Right.
So I thought that's just kind of a really, interesting thing.
It's like on every single one of them. And I looked at that and I was like, wow, I didn't realize how many areas of my life I'm healing it right now. Mm-hmm. So, but again, like that, one of my goals is just to be able to be a better developer for everyone else, and just recognizing that, how we work together as a team has just changed because the team has expanded so much, and we've never had a futuristic before. We have like a great team that we've never had. And do you have futuristic? No. Oh. Yeah. But I mean, I think that's awesome. And I sometimes when I think we encounter things where we're like, oh my gosh, like I don't know how to like pull this person or is it like a waste of time for everybody to be there or not? Like I think that that's probably normal because we're incorporating strengths that we've never had before and combinations of strengths. And so that's really interesting to me. And so I want to know how to better develop the team, but also the individuals on the team so they can continue to bring more to the table. And sorry for getting
Don't be sorry. I think it's wonderful. It shows you feel safe in this group, and I think that's so important for a team. It's critical, actually. So, and I'd say you are. You're all in you're in a really exciting growth phase right now, and in that phase, learning to work as a team is new in some ways because the team is shifting and job responsibilities and growth is happening, external, there's a lot going on. So that is something you're navigating. And we do think this is a really powerful tool for that, and a really positive one, because you can go back to it when the inevitable growing pains arise, and you can find a positive path forward. And I think that's really useful, and hopefully will be as we get more into the team piece of this too.
There's a great. Sorry, go ahead.
Does it cost to take this outside? Like, if I were wanting my husband to take this, how much would that cost?
It's very useful for relationships, I have to say. So you can go to Gallup. I actually have made my entire family take this. It has helped so much. Adam's made his entire family take it. It does explain a lot of patterns. And like I said, it gives you a positive way to work with them. So I believe the Gallup changed the price recently. I think it's
$19.99, yeah.
Yeah, so you can go to just where you went to take it, and you can purchase a code. And then you get all the reports you have, and I will, if you need a report, we can make a top 5 too. It's pretty fast. It's easy. And we can we can talk more about that later, but.
Hey, before you guys leave, I want to ask you an idea.
Sure.
But I mean, everybody knows. It doesn't have to be everyone in here. Just before you leave.
Okay, I'm open for it now because I want to really respect your time, and we're over the hour mark, so I'm okay to sort of wind down and hear your question or idea.
Well, if you guys want to go, but I was gonna say, okay, so have you ever had anyone? This is just an idea, but like, have you ever had any of your people that you're going through this and be like, all right, here's all the things, here's all these talents, and then choose what you think is your top 5, and then you make them take the test and see what they get?
We have not done that. There is kind of a bias that can occur. It's a very interesting idea to think about, but I will tell you that the idea is that if you take this sight unseen, you statistically get the most accurate results the first time. Because afterwards, you might start to learn about the other 34 and be like, oh, I wish I had empathy higher, or I wish I had positivity higher, and you might skew your answers just a little bit. Now, the test is kind of designed where they sort of recheck it. So that's something. But I will say that every one of us has all 34. It's just a matter of order. So you can pull up, like if you see one you want to develop, pull it up and look at it, read it, and kind of like say, all right, well, what is harmony about?
Well, it's not necessarily that. I'm just curious to see, like, I guess it would be more of a how cognizant are you of things? And like, I think that you're really cognizant of, yeah, like I'm super this, but then like when you take the test, you're like, oh, well, maybe that's why I thought I was this. I don't know. I think it just knew more than anything, not like saying like, well, I wish I had this. It's more of just like, what self-perception, like what do you perceive yourself as versus like what traits are you actually displaying, and then actually what your top 5 is, you could apply to why you thought that about yourself.
Well, I think it's interesting you say about this, what you say and then what you say, like about, the skewing, because I know that when I was younger and more insecure and I would take personality tests, I would answer the questions about how I wanted to be, not what my natural immediate reaction would be, because I think I was a little bit insecure about my immediate reaction. Whereas like this one, for like, I feel like this is like for the first time when I took this, I was like, you know what, Maria, even if you like the other answer because it makes you feel better, still answer the way you would, naturally react to these questions. And I think a lot of mine is, spot on. Like the things that I thought, like the intellect, I thought that, I'm surprised that wasn't higher, because I love my alone time and I love to like sit and think about stuff. And in learner, I love to learn about stuff. I don't want to know everything, but I just want to know, I want to learn. But so like so many things, but it was interesting, and I thought it was spot on. But I feel like for the first time in my life, I actually took a test where I was, I didn't let, I am secure in who I am, so I feel like I took it.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like, what would I have chosen? Like, what does my brain think that, like, what's my awareness versus the reality? Because I feel like that is probably a lot different.
Yeah, Natalie, your point is interesting. I just want to say real quick, sorry, getting someone to, okay, that's right.
So go ahead, Adam.
Getting someone to take the StrengthsFinder is hard enough. So imagine trying to get somebody to read through all 34 descriptions and then pick their 5 and then take the StrengthsFinder. I think it'd be awesome. I think it'd be really interesting to do. I just know how hard it is to get people to take it without even doing that step of reading through all of them. So yeah, if you can get somebody to participate in your experiment, please do. Like, get your spouse or somebody who's beholden to you, somebody you have dirt on, and then make them do that.
I think it's a really interesting idea, and
I feel like I'll do it now and like go through and see. Although I'd be biased now because now that I know that what I got.
But there might be a lot of, like, even though you know your top 5, there might be a lot of use to sort of exploring the other ones. I think becoming familiar with the other ones is key, especially as a team. And I agree, Maria, that, coming into it, one of the only times we recommend somebody take it again, unless you just really want to, is that if you do take it when you're younger, like a teenager, you do probably want to take it when you're an adult, because of things like that, security levels, but also like developmental. Like you might be in a different place where you are more of kind of who you're going to be in the world. You know, you've had some time to have experiences. And so that's the group. Like Adam does this all the time. He has his high schoolers take it and then, you know, encourages them after college, you know, after they've had a few years under their belt, take it again, you know, see. And it's not that those other ones don't apply. So I want to really stress this. Like, this is so important that you don't feel like, oh, I don't have deliberative. Well, deliberative is my last place. It's true. But I still have it, you know, and I can be aware of the quality of that, you know, just like we don't know what number, you know, unless you unlock your 34, you don't know what 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 are, and those might be pretty high. They might be really close statistically to some others. So total benefit, you know, actually your ideas are overlapping here a little bit because there is a benefit, and we're going to talk about that as we get more into the team stuff. Getting familiar with the other themes is super useful. So that's something to think about. But I do want to respect your time, and I will say if you want to take me up on talking through your top 5 to help you connect with them, please just reach out, and also spend the next month getting a little bit more familiar, exploring some of those desired outcomes. If you have some you want to just email me or, you know, talk to me about, do so. But, you know, otherwise just kind of tuck them back, kind of think about how this could be useful for the team, what you'd like to see out of it, because we'd like to shape it for that. Adam, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I do. I want to add a little story. There's a philosopher named Arthur Schopenhauer, and he kind of made this metaphor, and then somebody took his metaphor and wrote a book about it. And it's about these porcupines, and you might have heard this before, these porcupines who were huddled together on a cold winter's day to keep warm. But as they huddled closer together, they felt the stab of one another's quills. So they moved further apart, and they began to get very cold. So they moved closer together and began to stab each other again. And the idea was for them to find the optimal distance between where they were sharing maximum warmth, but minimizing the stab of one another's quills. And I just think it's a great metaphor for relationships and teams and groups where you guys are a group of porcupines, you know, and so how could you find the maximum way to align and position yourselves in relation to each other? Everybody has quills even the nicest among you, you know. So how do we minimize the stabbing of the quills, which nobody intends to do? Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, how can I, you know, create contrast for people? Wait, is Nicole coming to turn me off? Is she pulling the plug on me? Yeah, well, it's frozen. Your screen is frozen up for me, at least. But yeah, you get the point. That's all I wanted to say.
Sorry, Adam.
No, it's all good. It's all good. What's that?
Oh, hilarious.
I think that's a good metaphor.
Yeah, I think
thank you, Adam. That's interesting.
Okay. Good. Very good.
Well, thank you all. Is there I don't want to cut you off. Is there anything you'd like to add? But I do want to thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing and doing your worksheet. And there'll be more to come.
We'll talk soon. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.